Good afternoon, everyone. When Tracy was working on this program and she had me down to follow the governor, my first thought was, oh no, I have to follow the governor. How am I going to do that? And my second thought as an optimist was, the governor's my warm-up act. So here we are. So basically my role is to try to provide some context for you around what's happening in local news across the country and importantly here in Illinois. A little bit about the Medill Local News Initiative. We're now 8 years old and we do leading edge research. We have the nation's largest database of local news organizations. We also do a lot of audience research, and we do that so we can work directly with local news organizations here in Chicago and around the state to try to help with sustainability and help with growth. So we're taking our research out of the ivory tower and applying it directly with news organizations. So I'm going to throw a lot of data at you, but before I do that, I just wanted to provide a little bit of context around the era that we're living in. So we are all of us in this room, are living through a historic, not a generational change, but a true historic change in how people consume news, and how news is produced, and how news is distributed out to you, the consumer, and importantly, in how it's paid for. This is maybe the most historic time for the media industry, going back to the penny press, which is almost 200 years ago. I wasn't alive then, but that's what I heard. These are really historic times, and things are changing very, very rapidly. And with any industry that's changing this rapidly, there's both destruction and there's creation. Right now, unfortunately, we're seeing more destruction than we are creation in local news. I will say, and I'm going to talk about this, that we're blessed here in the city of Chicago that we're in an oasis. Chicago is really a national incubator of innovation in local news, so thank you to all of our Chicago news organizations that are here. So how did we get to this place? The crisis in local news really happened because the business model collapsed. Newspaper advertising revenue, which made up 70-80% of all revenue, has declined by 80% in the last 20 years. No industry can lose 80% of its primary revenue source and not be affected. We're also seeing declines in audiences that have occurred over the past few years. And we also do a lot of audience research. And according to ComScore, in the last 4 years, there's been a 45% decline in digital traffic to the nation's 100 largest local news organizations. So indeed, things are changing rapidly. So this is a map of the U.S., obviously, that includes the news deserts across the U.S. Every week in this country, about 2.5 newspapers disappear. Just a few days ago in Iowa, they shut down 18 newspapers in Iowa, creating new news deserts there. In just 2 or 3 weeks, Pittsburgh will lose its last major local newspaper in that city. So we're unfortunately seeing this trend continue. And so if you look at the map, we love purple at Northwestern. So the yellow counties are the news desert counties. The light purple are counties that are down to 1 local news source. And then the dark purple counties, and you see a number of those in the Chicago area, are the news rainforests, as I call them, areas where there's lots of local news. So there are now about 214 counties in the U.S. that are entire news deserts. No newspaper, no digital source, no public broadcasting, no ethnic media in those areas. There are 1,500 plus counties in the U.S. that are down to 1 local news source. So you total all that up, and there are more than 50 million Americans that have no or limited access to local news. We've seen about a 40% decline in newspapers in the last 20 years. And unfortunately, most of those closures in the past year have been independent publishers, locally based. And those are exactly the kind of publishers that we do not want to lose. This is some of the carnage, the personal carnage that we've seen in the industry. 75% decrease in newspaper employment, 60% decrease in newspaper reporters and editors, 270,000 newspaper jobs lost. And the newspaper industry ranks fourth among all sectors of the economy in terms of job loss. And if you're interested, DVD and VHS tape manufacturers, I think, are near the top, as well as film processors. It's been a serious loss. So here's the situation in Illinois specifically. So Illinois now has 9 news desert counties. That is up by 4 news deserts from just 2024. That we obviously don't want to see that number continue to go up. There also are large swaths of the state that are in the light purple, so they're down to 1 local news source. 47% of Illinois' counties are either news deserts or low information counties. That's 700,000 of our fellow Illinoisans live in those areas. And just a couple of notes about this Illinois data. A lot of people mistakenly think that the news desert problem is just a rural problem, but more than half of the losses of newspapers in Illinois have actually happened in the suburbs around Chicago. So it's not ever, Cook County, God willing, is never going to be a yellow county on our map, but there has been a lot of loss in coverage in this area. So I wanted to point that out. The data science team at Northwestern developed a predictive model looking at the current situation with local news deserts across the country and applied it to counties with only 1 news source. They tell us that there are 249 additional counties in the U.S. that are at high risk of losing local news in the next 5 years. I'll repeat that, 249 additional counties at high risk of losing local news in the next 5 years, if you look at the data. So, some people say to me, Franklin, a lot of industries go through turmoil and go through disruption. So why is the local news industry any different? And certainly it's a tragedy when there's jobs lost in any industry, but with news, it's different because there's now research that shows that in news desert, low information areas, that civic engagement declines in those areas. And I was just talking with Melissa before we started today, who researched municipal election participation here in Illinois, and indeed found that participation and turnout goes down in areas of the state that have little access to local news. There's increased polarization because there's no nonpartisan independent source of local news and information. In an area, people tend to just vote straight ballot in those areas because they don't know the candidates. There's also research that shows government spending goes up, government borrowing costs go up. There's more government corruption in these areas, according to a study at Tulane. And the University of Florida just did a study last year that showed that government secrecy is much higher in states where there are fewer newspapers per capita. So more government officials basically ignore FOI laws. And then, of course, we're seeing a tsunami of misinformation across the country, and lack of reliable, trustworthy local news exacerbates that problem. So I'm not all gloom and doom here today. There's a lot of reason for optimism in the local news industry. There have been 300 plus local news startups in the United States in the last 5 years, both print and digital, although many of them obviously are digital. We're going to talk later today about the movement among a number of states toward public policy, which I think is encouraging. Philanthropy, which we're going to talk more about, and the role that it's playing. We're also seeing the growth of these local news networks across the country. Think Axios or States Newsroom or Tap Into or Patch that are national networks, but that are creating local news sites in those areas. And then also we're seeing journalism schools like Medill and other schools that are stepping up to work with newsrooms and provide research and that are providing shared services. So this is a map I love. So this is what we call our local news bright spots. So these are, in the white are the 300 local news startups across the country. By the way, there have been 7. Yes, applause, please. There have been 7 startups in Illinois in the last 5 years, and we certainly hope that that number goes up as well. And then finally, if you want more information, we have interactive maps. We have a lot of data on the Medill Local News Initiative website. This is the QR code. So if you're looking for more data, more information, if you'd like to see all the mini reports that we put out and articles, please check the QR code. Also want to thank my colleagues from the Local News Initiative who are with us here today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for caring and for being with us this afternoon. It's great to have you, and I will turn it back over to Stefan. Thank you.